All right, all right, all right. It's Thursday night. As you know, it's the Dad Next Door show. I'm Jason, aka the Dad Next Door, and we got a special treat for you today. If you guys are into muscle cars, like in the Fast and the Furious and Gone in 60 Seconds, then you're gonna love this next guy, Patrick Krook. I met him off of Clubhouse, and we ended up bonding. And he's a really unique character, and I can't wait for him to tell you his story and how he got involved and all that. And you'll get to hear from him in just a minute. So sit tight and get ready. Be right back.
Fatherhood. It's how we keep our tribes and families strong. You've landed in the right place if you're ready for dad jokes, tips, and tricks on fun parenting. Also with interviews with some of the coolest dad entrepreneurs we could track down and have them share their strategies to tackling it all in business and life on the Dad Next Door. And now, your host, Mr. Dad Jokes himself, Jason Centeno.
They don't show you it in action because of things like this.
Fix it.
Someday I'm going to get her to do that live because I think it's just great.
It's precious.
What's going on, my man Patrick? It's been about 2 weeks since we talked, but always a pleasure.
Oh yeah.
So let's let the people know who you are. So tell us, how did you become a dadpreneur, entrepreneur? I'm calling you dadpreneur because that's my thing, but they know what we mean, entrepreneur. Tell us how you made that move.
Well, it's really simple. Necessity is the mother of invention, right? I started out of college in internet recruiting and IT recruiting back in the late 90s, early 2000s during the dot boom, and was developing GISs for a little bit before that. And all of that was really, really fun. 23 years old, making 10 to 15 grand a month, thinking that was normal. Started a family, was working for a venture capital fueled startup. Was an optionaire. Sitting on 5,000 shares at a 30-cent strike price. Built the company up from 0 to 134 people down back to 0 in 9 months. And then I found myself going from having $120,000 in salary and bonuses and paying 0 for insurance to having a COBRA payment that was in excess of my mortgage payment. And that was scary. That was scary. We had to sell the house that we were living in. I had 4 cars. I sold them down to 1.5, and moved back to close to free babysitting, back to parents, but not in with parents. It's a big difference. Set up in a 4-flat apartment with a newborn and actually a toddler and one on the way, and kept my belly full by taking contract jobs for a little bit. And I decided I didn't like recruiting. I liked IT. I didn't like recruiting. I was doing pharmacy recruiting and recruiting for insurance companies and stuff like that. It just wasn't fun. So I put myself on the couch. I started a lot of people's careers. I helped a lot of people become self-actualized in the technology industry. And I just asked myself, okay, if time and money weren't factors in my decision-making, what would I be doing? What would I be spending my time with? And the answer to that is I'd be playing with old muscle cars, So I just okay, this is my passion. This is my interest. And what are my skills? Well, I don't build engines and I don't paint cars and I don't build race cars, but I know how to sell things. And there's really nothing more complex than a technical sale of a person that's going into some of the most sensitive data installations in the planet. And the difference between a person and a car is people can lie to you about what their qualifications are, right? They can misrepresent themselves. Cars, people can lie about them, but you can always tell what they really are. So I just took the skills that I learned from technical recruiting and applied it to brokering investment quality automobiles. And my uncle gave me a 67 Buick Wildcat that was brown and rust. And he said, your cousin and I, we're going to build this and we're not gonna, so you can have it, but you can't keep it. I'm like, okay. So I sold it for $750. And that was the seed money to start my first online auto brokerage. And my wife authored the first website. And I spent that summer, going through classifieds, looking for very specific cars that were just advertised in the wrong spot. And I cold called them. And one of my first clients was a guy who ended up being an NCRS in Bloomington Gold Corvette judge. He had a couple of 93 Ruby edition Corvettes that he wanted to sell. He had 4. He wanted to sell 2. I ended up selling 13 that summer, because every time someone would call and go, I'm looking for that car, I'm like, well, that's sold. Forget about that. What do you really want? And I'd take another order and I'd locate one. So summer of 2003, I call the Corvette summer. And that's what got me rolling.
And that system that you created, that whole system, right? For your, like you said, your wife did the first website, and then your website, it's revmusclecars.com. And not for nothing, but if you did car porn, yeah, go there.
Yeah, no, right. And the big difference, what you'll find there and what we started, 17, 18 years ago was, everything that is put on that website is inspected up front, described by an independent third party, professionally photographed and videotaped. It's not the owner telling you what he thinks he has. It's not a car salesman trying to tell you what he thinks you want to hear. It is what the car is, and warts and all, because nothing is perfect. And the idea is it, we describe things the way that we feel the ideal person would want them. It's like, what is this car? Who would be a fit for this car? So that description is based on the facts, what the third parties saw, and the fit. Who would be a best fit for this car? So when you call or email, there's not a pitch. There is okay, thanks for contacting us. What do you really want? And I'll tell you straight up whether or not this car is a fit. And if it's not, forget it. We'll find something that is. That's the whole approach. The technology has evolved and changed over the years. It's gotten prettier and fancier, but that is the formula that has worked.
What's the strangest or kind of most rock star story you have around one of these cars? Like some kind of crazy, how it came into your hands or who you sold it to? What do you got?
Strange. That's there are actually way too many.
Really? Whenever you do something like this, like custom and just like that valuable, like I'm sure I know you mentioned some that you're not going to talk about because of the legalities of it, but
yeah.
Stuff that won't get you killed by a cartel. How about that?
All right. So everybody involved in this story is dead, so I'm safe.
All right.
No, I had got to know a rather prominent collector who, I love wealthy guys that aren't about throwing their wealth around. There's a lot of guys out there that'll remind you and tell you how important they are and how much money they make. Every turn, every conversation, they want to throw that back in your face.
So they're like a living clubhouse bio, right? Like
yeah, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And this guy, his name was Steven Giuliano. Got to know him just over conversations, really low key. And he was just a car guy. He was just a nerd about cars, the minutia of them. I mean, when he restored a car that was a former race car, he would chase down the guy who painted the original lettering on the side of the door so he could do it again. He was that guy. You know, it's like, well, those are the same brushes that you used. So when you can see the proof marks in the paint from the numbers, it's the same effect as it was the first time. He was maniacal that way. Okay. Really big into Mopars. It was also building a Cobra and a Shelby collection. And the first car I sold him was a 1969 Barracuda Formula S mod top. And this is not a pretty car. It's a light yellow, like, water cup yellow car with a yellow and brown floral top. And the inserts to the seats were a matching floral. And he wanted to buy it, but not on eBay, not in public. He just wanted to be very quiet. This car sold for $42,000. It was an unrestored car, and it was probably the least expensive car in his collection. But the way that we dealt with each other, he's like, Patrick, I'm not going to deal with anybody anymore. You and I are going to. This is how we're going to work things. Can I cuss on this? No. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
this is what he told me. He's like, I love the cars, and I don't like dealing with some of the people I take care of that I encounter. You are my asshole firewall. That's what you are, and I like dealing with you. So, so it started out with that $42,000 car. It got to the point where he goes, Patrick, I want you to find me a 427 SC Cobra. They only made 33 of them, right? And I found one of the 33, worked a guy for 6 months, calling him at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, convincing him that he wants to sell his car. And one day I called him on the day that his wife also wanted him to sell his car in order to buy some property. So he agrees to sell the car for $1.62 million. Now, my fee is anywhere between 5 and 10% of the sale price of the car. And I called him, Stephen, said, listen, here's the deal. Car's yours. Here's the number. And I was fully expecting him to try to grind me on my fee. Okay. Because even at 5%, it's like, $62,000, $62,500. And he goes, will you take cash? I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, you can just wire me money or send a cashier's check. And he goes, no. Will you take cash? And I'm like, intriguing. Sure. He lives in New York. I'm in Chicago. We meet at a Bob Evans in Indiana for him to pay me my fee in $20 bills. It turns out that he was the owner of some of the most successful nightclubs in New York.
Okay, define nightclubs, because if it's 20s, I have an inkling of what you mean.
Let's put it this way. I later visited his home in Pelham, and the grand piano that sat in the Copacabana when it was open was sitting in his front room. Okay. Yeah.
So he was Trump before Trump, maybe.
Oh yeah. In fact, what he did, he actually was a marketing consultant for the African American community. So if you wanted your product to be picked up by the elite rappers or elite sports guys, you'd call him, and he would tell you what you needed to do in order to make that happen. In fact, one example he shared with me is, people weren't drinking Cavassier because they couldn't pronounce it correctly. They couldn't order it without embarrassing themselves. So Cavassier said, how can we capture this market share? And he goes, well, that's simple. Have it featured in a rap video, in a rap song, and however they pronounce it is how your product's pronounced now.
Yeah, I guess
and right. And so this idea actually grew into rappers having their own labels of alcohol. So this is who Giuliano was. But his passion was automobiles, particularly unrestored original paint cars. And if it wasn't that way, he'd make it that way. Like he took that $1.62 million Cobra SC and he's like, I dumped another 50 grand into it, repatriating all the parts that were restored off the car when it was restored. He's like, it had leather seals and stuff in the rear carrier and things. And I needed to get those things back. Yeah. And shortly before he passed, he called me and he said, you know what, Pat, thank you. And I'm like, well, why? And he goes, because the car that you helped me buy, that one, is now worth at least $1 million more. Just a few years later.
And who's buying them though? But I mean, you know better than me. I just like I can't fathom that. But I certainly can appreciate.
Jason, here's the thing. When I started this business, I was broke and desperate, and I thought most people had that same relationship with money that I did. Broke and desperate, no matter what, I never had enough. And a lot of people probably, are raised with the same habits and the same attitudes. And what I learned through the car business is that there is more wealth in this country than you'd ever imagine. And more really good-hearted people with wealth than you're ever told there are. And I've met them all at play when they're hanging out with their hair down, with their loafers off, outside the boardrooms, outside the companies that they've built, just being people. These are the guys that would, when my kids would come into onto the show field, pick them up and throw them in the seat of the car and ask them how they've been doing. It completely blew away every perception I was ever given growing up in the media, in the news, in school about what rich people are like. And the only thing that they want is to be respected and their passions to be protected. These people work really hard and eat a lot of shit sandwiches in order to get where they've gotten. And when they go to buy themselves something as a reward for themselves for that, they want a different experience than having, to eat another shit sandwich. And one of the things I got really good at is understanding the want behind the want. Okay, you want a 63 split window Corvette. That's great. How come? What brings you to looking for a $100,000 50-year-old piece of technology? Why? And you know what? Sometimes it's because their dad had one and they love their dad.
I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you if a lot of it was like memories or emotions wrapped up in the vehicle, just like however they grew up. So
it's a touchstone, right? It's a touchstone to a memory. I've had a lot of guys, came back from Vietnam, and the first thing they did is bought themselves a car, and that was a way they dealt with, what they experienced in war is wrenching on this car, racing this car, spending time in this car, and a lot of them, sold it when they got married or just fell into disrepair. And now that they're retired, they want that again. That's the thing that's the biggest gift for me out of all of this. It's not the lifestyle it's afforded me. It's the fact that I get to hear all these stories, and I also get to retell them.
So What's the car that does it for you? Like that you would have that emotional kind of connection with the most?
Well, and people ask me this, and they don't ask me that way. They just go, "What's your favorite car?" And then I tell them, and they look at me cross-eyed because it's nothing that they would normally. Oh, okay. It's a '68 Mercury Cougar XR7 G.
Okay, and so what's the emotion? What's the connection?
First of all, that's the ultimate expression of the 67, 68 Cougar, because it's got the 427 side oiler, the Cobra motor in it. And Ford never put one in a Mustang. They never did that for Shelby, but they did it for Dan Gurney. And Dan Gurney proceeded to kick Carroll Shelby's ass in Trans Am with a Mercury product. For as famous as GT350s are, Dan was a little better. But the reason that I love that car in particular is because when I was 15, 16 years old, I'd either bicycle or walk from my house to work, which was a McDonald's. Sometimes I'd open, sometimes I'd close, sometimes I would do a back-to-back close open. And no matter what, after I got down this long, lonely stretch of road, there was this guy's house. It was a blue house with a little single wide, double or triple deep garage and a bare bulb just hanging out on it inside. No matter what, if I got off of shift after closing or if I was on my way to open, he was in his garage working on stuff. And after a while, I stopped, and he had a Cougar collection. They littered the side yard. They were in the garage, and he didn't tell me to screw off. He just let me watch. We talked. We got to know each other. He was a Ford mechanic at the local Ford dealer one town over. And when I bought my first car and I brought it to him, he's like, "You're supposed to bring this to me before you buy it," because it was a disaster. But he taught me how to wrench, and he gave me the time of day. And that stuck with me. My dad was a car guy, but he was also a workaholic. So I really never bonded with him that way. But this guy, he showed me the ropes. And that's why I love Mercury Cougars.
He was your car dad. Instead of your dad, he was your car dad.
Yes, he was car dad. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I mean, that totally makes sense. I mean, that attraction, that memory. So like for me, it was, if I had, I like two kind of cars. One, you actually have on your site, the 57 Chevy 3100, because I just like that look of someone who, because it looks like you work, but you're cool too. Like something about it. It's like that. I don't know. It just gives me that feeling, right? So like out of all of those, I kind of that one
resonates with you.
Yeah, resonates with me. And then a 68 Malibu Classic, because I actually had one for a little while, but I was too young, and nobody would let me drive it because I was too young. So I ended up selling it for college money or something. But it pissed me off that I never really got to drive it, but like once or twice, and nobody trusted me because it was too much car for me.
And they're beautiful. That's the first year for that body style, and it had all the gingerbread, and all of the trim on it is actually metal instead of plastic. That's a cool car and totally gettable. So let me know when you're ready.
I would probably go after this Chevy more faster.
Well, that one in particular is sold. It sold last week, and
it was over. Let's go. We're done. No.
Interviews. Well, okay. So here's the funny thing about it. Here's the funny thing about that. I've had dozens of calls on that truck, and it's aqua with an aqua velour interior. Okay. And the guy who owned it, built it for himself. He had a body shop. Okay. He's also a local pastor. So it's like God's hot rods. That's his kind of, his deal. But, everybody would get stuck on this fuzzy blue interior. and it would just never come together. They couldn't get, I have to redo it and it's going to cost thousands. And, I'm out of the car. I'm like, are you kidding me? Look at the bodywork on this thing. You cannot do this. You can't even build the motor for what the car is, for what it's being asked for. So just out of the blue, and I get an inquiry on Facebook Marketplace. And those are always, is this car available? Yes. What can I deal you with? And then crickets, right? That's the joke.
I'm interested, and then no response.
Yeah, and nothing, right? This was offer, which was low. I'm like, counter, recounter, sold before I got on the phone with them. It was just wild. It was wild. And I'm like, okay. And so, now it's going to be in Iowa. So if you want to know where it's at, you want to stock the car, I'll let you know. You can go visit until it's yours. How's that?
Not acceptable. I want to discount on this. I'll tell you which one you can make it. This Dodge Dart is looking pretty. This
the green one?
Yeah, it's pretty sweet looking.
Snakeskin. It's a Viper snakeskin green. It's a 70, right? That car was built by a guy out in Westfield, New Jersey, and he built that car in order to relax after work. He owns a number of body shops, and he's become more of a manager than a hands-on guy. And I don't know if you've ever built a business to the point, guys, when you build a business to the point where you're no longer doing the business, you're working in the business rather, then it gets to be a bummer. So this guy would build these custom hot rods literally in his garage in order to relax and stay connected to the reason he built his business to begin with. And that vehicle is actually detuned now. It went to California. I sold it to a guy. It had 850 horsepower for a Dart that weighs less than 3,000 pounds. That's nuts. He added air conditioning to it, detuned it to 650, and put overdrive in it because it had 430 gears in it. And it's still a monster because it weighs 2,700 pounds. And you can buy it for like 55 grand, which is probably the cost of the paint job. All the paint and body work is just nuts on that car.
Yeah, well, I got 6 kids, and if I get that, then she's gonna want, I don't know, something obscenely ridiculous to counteract what I wanted. But
yes, anyway. Yes, no, that's a valid thing. I will tell you, I just sold a Hemi RT to a guy for $125,000, and he's like, this is cost, huh?
A revenge buy, right? Like she's.
Oh no, it's a quid pro quo. I want a new custom kitchen. Okay, yeah, that's how this works. The secret is to get your spouse into something that is very inexpensive. So, like, I collect guitars, and my wife likes Cows on Parade figurines, and I'm telling you what, the most expensive Cows on Parade is way less than the cheapest guitar.
I got to find that cheaper than mine voice. That's what you're saying. There you go.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So we dug deep into the cars. I need to ask about like your family though. Like, so do any of your kids want to follow your footsteps yet? He's an 18-year-old, right? Is he into any of this?
Yeah. Can you still hear me? Okay, yeah. Good. Yeah, my 18-year-old son is he wants to be an aerospace engineer. So when we were touring the Corvette museum as part of on the way back from a high adventure trip with his Boy Scout troop, they had all of the astronauts' cars in the Corvette museum. And he fell in love with the 1970 Corvette Stingray in red. That's what he wants. And I'm like, well, good, because those are really affordable compared to most other Corvettes right now. But yeah, he's got the bug. Not quite as hands-on, as I was at his age, but things are mostly about screens these days. I just took him on an adventure road trip out to his sister's college because her car was dying, and I showed him how to nurse a dying car 4.5 hours in below zero weather without leaving yourself on the side of the road. Her car had 180,000 miles on it. Had a cracked head. The thermostat was stuck, and the coolant system was also leaking. I'm just like, let's go. I can get it home. And there was one point that was really harrowing because the car threw itself into limp mode. Check engine light came on, rev limiter came on. We had to, ditch the car for a little bit, let it cool down. But then I figured out what the computer was doing, and I kept it running so it wouldn't go back into limp mode. And about the last 80 miles were without any heat whatsoever in the cabin. So we're really happy that we had heated seats and long underwear on.
So does pepper really help in the situations with that cracked? What did you say? Cracked radiator or cracked?
It was the cylinder head itself was cracked because because I was told about this problem after the car had been running without coolant for a while, and the check engine light was on, and like, great, that's just great. And the only thing I had to do is I had to, the 10 millimeter socket joke.
No.
The 10 millimeter socket is the most important, and also the socket that's always missing in the toolbox. And that is the only thing I needed to get that car roadworthy enough to take it to get it home. It needed a new battery. So I swapped the battery out. We jumped in the car and got home. I actually just traded it in on something new yesterday.
Sorry. Here, you want a commercial break? Just want some water.
Hello.
Just the first time. Okay. All right.
Well, all right. She's water break. I'm gonna have a.
Yeah, she jimmied the lock. This is show 7, and I've kept her out all this time, but she managed to jimmy the lock this time, and we're in the middle of a show, so it is dadpreneur lifestyle.
Absolutely right.
Dadpreneur. Yeah. Okay. Now go lay down. She's even shouting it out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Must be the dulcet tones coming from you that just attracted her to this.
Is that right?
Yeah.
When my daughter was really little, she would write me little basically little love notes, right? Little love you, Dad. Go get it, and yeah, and just quietly slip them to me while I was on the phone with people and stuff. So
cool. Sometimes I get tickets to made up circuses, and same thing, like drawings of me, big heads and all this, but some of them come out good. So yeah, I always appreciate that, those random gifts of art.
Yep.
So what is your best dad life look like right now?
Best dad life, what does that look like? Being really intentional with the quality of time that I spend with my family, and particularly my kids. I think that it's really easy for me to get caught up in efficiencies, getting the wash out, getting, dinner done, running people back and forth to things. But, one of the things that really impacted me was there's a graph that's floating around on the internet that's the number of 90% of the quality time you spend with your kids are before their 18th birthday. And then the rest of your life, it's 10%. And so what I did with my son about a year ago, my oldest one, was just to create adventures that we can go on together. We took a road trip out to Alabama to the Aero Warriors reunion, where all the wing cars like Superbirds and Daytonas and stuff like that They came all over the country and they met there. There was over 300 cars. Some NASCAR drivers and legends were there. Some of the original race cars were there. And then we had 2 racetrack days. We were at Atlanta Motor Speedway in a 1970 Hemi Superbird, going around the track with other people in their 1970 Superbirds and Daytonas at 120 miles an hour. And Jackson was, sitting next to me while we were doing this, and then to cap off that weekend, we were at Talladega where they were open up the 400 there, and we were all in the infield where the old pit garages were. It's moments like that, right? And then because he's into space, we went to there's a rocket museum near there. So we went and toured that and got to talk to, got the behind the scenes tour, and then just road tripped home. And later that year, last November, not November before last, we did an Iceman Cometh mountain bike race together. 30 miles in the snow in the winter in Michigan. I trained my ass off for it this year, and then it got canceled at the last minute. And he bet me that he was going to beat me, and he didn't train worth a damn. And he was glad that it got canceled because he's like, Dad, you were going to kick my butt.
Have your Al Bundy moment, and they took it from you, COVID.
Yeah, well, whatever. It was. I learned something about myself both times, both under training for the first one and doing what it took to train right for the second one, and because I totally rebuilt my bike from the first one, and then I got all the parts to make his bike the best kind of XC racing bike, and we're going to build that one together over the winter, and then ride together. This coming summer. So my best dad life is being intentional in my work so I can be intentional with the time I spend with my family. Early on, I would always be thinking about work when I was with my family, so I'd be thinking about my family when I was at work, and both suffered. So that's the biggest thing that I've learned is locking in the mechanism, and instead of sitting there chewing my face about, I got to pick my son up at 3 and I just came home from dropping him off and I don't have a full day. I just have to make the best of the most time out of that. And when I go pick him up, switch it off, and be 100% present. For him, because my youngest is 12. He's in that age where, do I have what it takes is the big question. And he wants that adventure to live. He's starting to grow into wanting to do that. So my job is to model that for him. He's in Taekwondo now. He's also in Boy Scouts, and he likes cars, but he's not as he's a little more skittish about me when I go fast. Right at this point. But yeah, does that answer the question, or is there something else?
No, it's your dad life. I mean, you get to create that. I can't, like what you were saying about turning it on and off at certain points. I know it's necessary, but in my case, it's very difficult because there's always one here. So there's no go and seclude yourself for many, many hours because they're going to creep in. So I make do. I have a routine that I try to follow, and I have days that I do, days that I'm like, these are my super busy days. And then other days that are not so busy that I try to make up for it. But that's I mean, that's how I've adapted, but everybody's got to find their own sort of balance within that,
Well, you also have to have a sense of humor for about it, and never forget the purpose that you're doing it. I started the business because my wife and I made a decision early on that there was always going to be a parent at home. Even when she was early on in my business, when she was working so we could have health insurance, I was the one that was at home while I was building the business. I had a toddler running around and a newborn in a cradle, literally rocking Jackson, and Josie running around. And when I'm on a call selling a really expensive car with a very important person, and then all of a sudden they're screaming, the only thing you can do is go, "The veil of professionalism hath been breached." It's just, and this was way before, COVID made working from home conventional, where people understood background noise and things. If I joked about it, my clients joked about it, and no one's ever gotten upset with me about it, and on occasion I go, look, it's really important to me, especially when I was early on. I'd bring my kids with me to catalog cars because I didn't have a babysitter. You try explaining to a guy who's got a 20 car collection why your 4-year-old daughter is running around while you're trying to photograph a car. It's like, well, good thing she's cute.
Older.
Yeah, you know what? Right. In fact, when she was really young, she could get, behind the displays on cars that people would, don't touch except for you because you're cute.
Hey, I mean, cute kids can sell anything, so don't ever underestimate that. The power of that and just free passes to do things. Just neat. Yeah. So, and you're right about that. Like normally everybody understands, especially now with, just COVID just made everybody have to stay home. So there's nothing even odd about the random kid popping in and just doing a dance. And you're just like, whatever, halftime show. Let's just
right.
go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And there was actually, I'll have to admit, there was a really low moment where I was just frazzled. I had nothing in the tank. And, one of my kids came up while I was on the phone trying to close a guy on a sale that I really needed. And I lost my cool. And he was just mortified that I would yell at my kid like that, and it was, and I lost the sale, and also it was a wake up call. He's like, damn, he's right. And I actually called him back later to thank him. I'm like, you know what? Thank you for checking me because I have not been taking care of myself, and that's actually the best thing you can do as a dadpreneur. Take care of yourself first. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Make sure that you're drinking enough water instead of too much coffee. Make sure that you're eating, because when I'm strapped into this chair and I'm in the zone, I can go hours without realizing that I haven't done that. Or if I'm trying to push through, like especially when I was younger, I could work till 2 a.m. and then get up at 4 or 6. But no, I think that would be the other thing is because the kids pick up on those habits and they emulate them. And so if you want them to have good habits, have good habits.
You don't want to see them. You don't want them to see you going. Ooks, 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 ooks.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What's going on there, Dad? Where's that come from? And then you learn that. Now I know what that was about. That's why he was always tired and mad in the morning. I see. So I'm gonna change it up a little bit here just to mix it up. So I'm gonna give you 5 questions that are just random.
Okay.
To see what you answer. Okay.
All right.
So first, describe the perfect kiss in 3 words.
3 words. Wow. Okay. Supple, soft, and tongue. Those are the 3. Those are the 3 words.
Ah, they're good. What's your biggest addiction?
Binge watching television shows.
Like Netflix or like just any kind?
Oh, like I've been a lifetime NCIS watcher, and then I just made it all the way through the seasons back to current over COVID. And to switch gears, I watched all of the Avengers movies in chronological order.
Wow, that is that's an undertaking.
You know, and the lie I tell myself is that I do that in order to have a mental distraction, so I can do busy work, tedious work easier. And it's a lie, because I'll just not do the work and then watch the movie. You know?
And then you'll just go really hard because you got to catch up. And
Well, yeah. I you know, that's the and, you know, addiction is for me anyway, it's seeking comfort or relief instead of refuge. It's temporary. It goes away as soon as it's done, and the more you do it, the less satisfying it is.
Let's say the worse you feel at the end of it. Yep.
Right. And you know, and I'm particularly attracted to self-medicating with screens, especially movies and TV stuff, when I'm uncomfortable with the idea of the enormity of work that I have to do. And that especially comes with writing. I'm in the final stages of a book that's going to be published by Cartech on collecting cars. And I added a full year to the process by procrastinating. It's terrible. You know, but the cuckoo who is onto himself is halfway out of the clock. At least I know, you know, this is a problem, and I can check myself about it.
Got it. So do you have a song that reminds you of a relationship? And if so, what song?
Wow. The first one that came to mind was Fields of Gold by Sting. And that was Lorraine and I's wedding song. And we have a non-traditional relationship. We met in high school. We stayed together through college, got married and had children, and still like each other.
Some will call that traditional, but I understand.
Right, that's yeah.
Traditional a couple of years ago, but yeah.
Right, it's yeah. So we met when we were 16 and 17.
How many books have you read this year?
Oof. This year, I mean, it's only February.
True. You say that, I gotta be like, oh, wait a minute, I gotta go back.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Last year I read 26 books. Right now I'm reading 3 at the same time.
Yeah, I do that too. Like I just started. I used to not want to do that, but now it's like I like to mix it up a little bit because I don't want to go too far along in one and not absorb it. So I jump to one so I don't like let that lesson go too fast.
My guaranteed 10 pages a day is this right here.
Did I tell you the joke about him?
Chris Voss?
Yeah. So listen. So and I get to this. So you know how Masterclass does a they Facebook ads, and so you know you see the cookings and all that. So he was doing one for a Masterclass with Chris Voss. Yeah, and I'm saying if you order now, you get this class half off, or you get 2 for 1. And in the comments, I couldn't resist myself. I was like, but wouldn't that be ... splitting the difference? But he was just like you just got all these. It wasn't like that many, a whole lot of traffic, but all of them were just like the people that got the joke were like,
that was just crazy.
Yeah. So that's my Chris. That's my close call with Chris Voss. Although he's on Clubhouse a lot, so I probably should reveal that.
He is.
See if he thinks it's funny. That would be awesome.
I haven't encountered him yet, and the thing that's interesting to me is that he's not one of these guys that is always seeking the social media spotlight. And that's intriguing to me. And the reason I like the book so much, Andy Frisella and Ed Milet always talk about implementing at the speed of instruction. And I'm able to do that with the stuff that he's introduced in his books. Like just today, I was getting ghosted by a couple of clients. And so one of the things that he says is if you've been stonewalled, just send an email with this one question. Have you given up on the project? And I didn't send an email. I left a voicemail of that effect. And I'm like, have you given up on this car? Have you given up on this deal? And in both cases, within minutes, each client called me back. One guy finally committed to selling his car after 3 days of dragging his feet. And the other one popped up out of the woodwork going, oh, yeah, no. I still want it. I'm trying to figure out how to make it work. I'm like, and she's like, just be patient. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, damn, this stuff works.
Yeah, read his book. When I did read it, I was in a weird place.
Mm-hmm.
In the fire department at the time.
Okay.
I was kind of recovering from some stuff, and it was occupying my time and my mind, but I wasn't in the space to really get it all, but it was like I just needed to listen to something.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get all that I could out of it, but I think I need to go back through it again. So yeah.
Oh, I would. And his writing is very approachable. I think there's a lot of it's the way his writing voice is very accessible. Let's put it that way. And I think it's probably because he's a Midwesterner, isn't he? So I can relate to him.
So here's the last random question, because you're gonna love it. So when you dance, who do you look like?
When I dance?
Yeah.
Who do I look like?
Yeah, you look like Elaine from Seinfeld.
Yeah. No, Ed Begley Jr.
You kind of favor him a little. Well, I mean, he's you're definitely a better looking version of him right now. That's for sure.
When I was a kid, I worked at a place called Bare Bones. It was a retail outlet owned by the Anatomical Chart Company, and they put us in white lab coats. And that's reliably who people thought I looked like.
That's right. He was a doctor on the show. He did a lot.
St. Elsewhere or something like that.
He's been in a lot of lab coats. Yeah.
He's been in a lot of lab coats, and he also rides an indoor bicycle in order to power his home, so that kind of level of nerd dork is what I look like when I dance, I promise. And the only dance I really know is the twist. So,
and that's the dance you do when you sell a car, right?
Yeah, there you go. The twist. Oh, fun.
All right. So here's another one. What's one question you wish people would ask you, but they never do?
In an interview or when they're talking to me about a car?
I mean, you choose. This is your show. Which one inspires you to the best answer, I guess?
Yeah, no. Give it to me again.
Okay, what's one? I'll put it on the board. There you go. What's one question you wish people would ask you but never do?
Did you ever see yourself where you are now? And I think that's especially if you were to ask a 16, 17, or 18-year-old, as a 16, 17, or 18-year-old, did you ever think that you would see yourself where you are now? And the reason why I like that question is because when I was 16, 17, or 18, things like seemed insurmountable, immovable, and unchangeable. Like circumstances, you were always going to be under them. And if I was taught at that age to develop an unshakable vision for my life, I'd be where I am now and further. So I wish that's a question that kids would ask their fathers, but never do. So they can have that conversation. Yeah.
It's a good answer. So you're about to see mine, but what's your dad kryptonite, or the thing that you struggle with most as a dad?
I prioritize, if somebody asks me to do something, I'll drop everything that I'm doing and do it. And sometimes resent the hell out of them for it. To be honest, to be very candid. So my dad kryptonite is when someone says they have a need, I read it as they have an immediate need that is immediately superior to what's their urgent is more important than my importance. That's my dad kryptonite.
I know both sides of that. So I guess because as an emergency worker, you learn triage and you learn to identify what's really important, like what's life-threatening versus what's just noise.
Yep.
And people think I'm not listening to them, and it's because I'm not. It's not that I'm not listening. It's that the thing that I have in my hand right now that I'm doing has to be done before I get up to do whatever it is you're doing, or I'll never finish this. And then I will, like you just said, like resent them for pulling me off of that, because what they wanted was really so not unimportant or inconsequential, but just, they didn't respect the fact that I actually am doing work or doing something important too.
Right.
And that their need is just in the hierarchy of needs is minimal. Like, I need water now. Like, you can't wait 2 seconds or whatever it is. That I don't get mad. I just do that, and it pisses other people off. But I would rather be wrong. What is it? I'd rather be right and miserable. I'd rather be wrong and happy than right and miserable. Because if I get up and do it, I'm going to be miserable, but they're going to think I'm the right thing to do. And it's just like, no, not for me. It wasn't. So, that's the struggle. I get that struggle. That's just a different, I handle it a different way, and not always the right way. So go ahead.
So here's what I would invite you to interpret that as. You are respected and important because they're asking for your help. The help that they need is not necessarily the help that they're asking for. Okay?
It's attention, I know. And
our job is to help them grow up, help them develop their own capacity. So as they get older, you go, you know what? That's a great question, or that's a great problem. How are you going to solve it? And sometimes all they need is permission to know that what they have in mind is doable. You know what I mean? It's like, well, if I did get up right now, what would you have me do? Well, I'd have you, reach the pickle jar. Okay, great. How can you get that done? Well, I can go get the stool and go get the pickle jar. I said, okay, great. Go try that.
That is usually like, okay, for her, let's just say, that's too many steps, because you know how to go to the bathroom by yourself, right? You already know what to do, but you still want me to help you do it. Like, if you walked away, you would totally be able to do it. You wouldn't go to the bathroom on yourself. Yet there's still this demand, and I know what it is, but like at the same time, you kind of want them to stop that because it's really just being dependent on people doing everything for you and not making you stronger. So there's that whole struggle. But so how do you handle it what do you do when you're angry with your kids? How do you handle that?
If I miss the opportunity to compose myself, and my anger comes out sideways, I will immediately own it, and make amends. My dad would just get, pissed off, scream at me. And if I got upset that he was upset, I'd get more punishment. Right. I think it's been a huge thing as my kids have gotten older for me to either go to stop myself in the moment or come back shortly afterwards and go, you know what I was upset about may have been valid, but the fact that I got that big and that loud with you was my fault. I crossed a boundary, and I apologize. I've actually done that with my kids as they've gotten older. And they two things. One, they see dad as human, and they also see that, hey, we do forgiveness in this family. And if we ask for grace, we're given grace. It models it instead of, my daughter and I are very, very similar to each other. So we'll just escalate until we're both screaming for no reason, but as I've gotten better at parenting, that dynamic has improved from child to child. Does that make any sense?
It does, because I have a screamer, and it's just like there's no one technique that works. It's a combination of, it's almost like you have to have well, you're into programming. There's got to be this AI that has to keep developing over and over again to adjust adjust to each new nuance that they throw on top of it. Anyway.
Yeah. So you know what? And that's the thing about it is that, look, I wasn't just upset about what you did. I was upset about what you did. And I was already upset about a work situation. I was already upset because I was too tired, too hungry, too lonely, whatever. And then you walked in the middle of that. So it wasn't about you. So that's one way that I would own, my behavior and then offer an amends. The other thing is when I am on my game and the kids are emotionally triggered and they're loud and they want to draw me into a fight like that. If I just remain calm, use the midnight DJ voice, like he said, like Chris Voss says, eventually, it sounds like you're really upset about that. And just let them talk until they're calm too. One of the things in that masterclass you were joking about, he actually uses a situation where he's talking to his daughter about spending the weekend with his boyfriend's parents at their house. And the way he handles that conversation is masterful, because I know what it's like to project all of the horrible things that may happen and allow that to inform my tone and how I'm approaching her in the moment. And when I'm at my best, I'm able to remain calm and communicate why I'm saying what I'm saying, and let them talk themselves through it. It's not easy. It almost never happens that way, but when it does, it's beautiful. And the more of a habit that it becomes, just as a general communication lifestyle, style, the better it is. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you your best piece of life advice to other dad entrepreneurs, but I think you gave me some pretty good ones. I mean, I think you gave me at least 3 or 4 good ones during this conversation. So unless you have like one kind of.
I would just go back to taking care of yourself.
Okay.
You know, you have to give from yourself as a reservoir, not as a stream. You know, fill yourself up first, and then give out of what overflows. That's it, right there. That's the biggest one.
Yeah, it's the hardest one too, because people forget that, you know, whether you get up early in the morning and you need your quiet time, or if it's just like you go to bed early and you don't, you know, you're trying to get rest so that you are fresh, and when they come at you at those times, what they're doing is basically they're cutting their own legs out, because now you don't have the energy to deal with them, and it's always going to be less than the best you. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and you know what? You're going to deal with them anyway, but you're going to deal with them at your worst instead of at your freshest. You know, and you know, if you're into sports analogies, it's like, great. Would you go play the Super Bowl after you've been out all night on a bender? No, you wouldn't. You'd be sure that you're rested and ready. And that's how I need to meet each day. Because every day when you're a dad and you're an entrepreneur, it's a big game. It's the big game.
I got a question. I think we did say, I did ask you about this before. I'll let you answer it right now.
Yeah.
How about masterminds? Are you in any masterminds right now?
The only group I'm in fact, I'm wearing their shirt right now, you can see, is the Arte Accelerator. You know, I think it was important for me, you know, to join that. It's not so much a mastermind as a community. I mean, yeah, we do have Zoom calls, and you know, you've got Ed Milet and Andy Frisella, you know, teaching you meat and potatoes things that you can immediately put into action. That's based on the work that they've actually done building their multi-million-dollar businesses. It's not theoretical. It's not, you know, some plastic smile who wrote a book. You know, this is stuff that's real and it works. And the reason that I joined Arate and what I've gotten out of it more than anything else that I've engaged in is the fact that, look, as a solopreneur or as a small business owner, I'm out here a lone wolf. You know, Arate is the wolf pack. You know, and there is a camaraderie and a fraternity there that I haven't seen in other things that I've, you know, that have a Facebook group and things like that. You know, it's deeper than that. You know, so it's not cheap, but I'm like, you know, I've been doing it for 3 years and made a lot of gains that I've been able to apply in my business. Stuff I wish I knew for the 15 years before that. You know, yeah. That's
it. I mean, I'm always talking about masterminds is are important now more than ever, even though, you know, people are like, well, Clubhouse is like being in a mastermind. I'm like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff shared in them, but at the end of the day, it just depends. I mean, it's really hard to fill the need of someone, and depending on like what room you're in with a 5-second, you know, question answer Q&A to one person after they're rushing you in and out, to expect that you're going to get like very customized information or answers to your particular thing on a regular basis. Now, if you get it once in a while, I guess great, but there's something to be said about the consistency and the accountability that comes from people checking up if those answers were true. Like if someone gives you something off of Clubhouse, like, all right, so what if you go and try it and it totally sucks and you did it wrong? Are you ever going to be able to get that person to be accountable for what they told you again? It was like a drive-by, almost like a drive-by shooting. Like sometimes you take that and it's like, well, hopefully you don't get burned by it, or you use it the right way or whatever. So there's, you know, it's hard to put it into context or be very specific. I just personally like small gatherings because you can get deeper into it. Like what we're doing now is very intimate. and then, you know, a smaller group of say 5 to 8 people, like a lot can be done with that, and bond strengthen. And then, you know, and then there's bigger ones too, but I just always found value in it. That's why, you know, I have one, I'm in 2 others. I will continue to do that, because the point being, like you said, it's the leaps and bounds you get ahead. And especially now when it's really hard to network with people physically, like you, even more so now, because you just don't get that time to build if you can't even go out and meet people anymore, hardly. You know what I mean? It's just, it's difficult. So.
Oh yeah. And, you know, and that's actually one of the things that I really like about, you know, Arte, is the fact that I can put a question out or describe a dilemma that I'm having a difficult time with. And before I know it, I'm on the phone with 2 or 3 of these guys who have been in business for as long as, or if not longer than I have, you know, and we're really going through an effective problem solving, you know, set that I wouldn't get from a guy who's trying to teach me the skills that he's learned, that he's applied from this book. Can you still hear me? Okay, good. Where, you know, there's a playback going on. I wouldn't get from a guy who's trying to teach me the skills that he's learned, that he's applied from this book. Can you still hear me? Okay, good. There's something going on there with the there's a playback loop.
Figure that was unfortunate. So it happened. Yeah, probably. Sorry about that. That just that's me. That's
all right
with everything that's going on here.
No sweat. But yeah, so that's what I like about that particular group, is that you know, there's a good mix of journeyman entrepreneurs, you know, people who are just getting started, a lot of different disciplines, and it's not organized around you know, one personality's book, or you know, or one golden hammer approach. It really is a community, and they do bring in experts from different areas so we could cross train and things like that. But, you know, this is about what works in experience, not, you know, buy my book. You know, which is what I experience with most other mastermind type things that I've experimented with.
Yeah, I know there's sometimes an upsell and sometimes not, but yeah, like I said, there's such a variety of them that it's hard to say like they're all like one thing, but you definitely got to try a few before you find, I guess, kiss a lot of frogs before you get a prince. Is that the same?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you know, I'm not going to take anything away from Tim Grover or the work that he's done. He's got a mastermind, he's got a group, he's got things, and it's all about his book, you know. And I don't run into, you know, that every single time. And if I, you know, so it's not like it's a constant contact with that community. You know, does that make sense? I mean, Chris Voss doesn't have his own community, but there is one that's about this. And usually it's people, when they're new to the material, they come and they run through, and then the whole thing kind of goes fallow. You know, there's always a fresh spring going on. You know, when I talk to the Arte people, because you have people who are iterating new material that is done on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, different stages in their lives, different stages in their businesses, through a different variety of businesses. And so it's a lot more buzz than you would get even if you're in a marketing only group, you know, because it's all aspects of the business. You know, so that's why I like it. You know, we're gonna edit this piece and then ask them for, you know, a portion of the proceeds, because people are going to join Arte now.
I'll put my affiliate link in here real quick. I don't even have one, but I'll make one up. Arte.com/sexydaddy.
There you go. We can have an affiliate program. If you want to do that, we can work it out.
I know. So, how do you want to leave your mark in the world, Patrick?
Oh my gosh, legacy, huh?
Well, we all got to leave it somehow. Might as well leave it with a bang or not a whimper.
Yeah, no. You know, I think how I want to spend the back 40 of my life. What John Eldridge calls the sage stage is really empowering the next group of leaders in my community. I've been part of my community. I'm a fourth generation Lake County guy in Illinois. A lot of people don't like what's going on in the state, so they leave. And that leaves a giant vacuum of people who stay here that need good character development, good leadership skills, and know that they have what it takes. And my legacy, the mark I want to leave, is to know that beyond my children, I've helped other young men and women be equipped to take charge of their lives, take a leadership role in their lives and in their community, and make a difference. And I don't care if I get credit for it. I just want to have that impact.
So, are you in a program or something for that, or is this just something that you want to develop in the future?
No, there's a number of programs that I have volunteered for. So it's not necessarily developing a program about it. It's really just about being the biggest impact player where I am. Bloom where you're planted, and I don't think that gets enough credit. I think it's really important for people to stand, and return to the community that they've grown up in. So whatever that looks like, through my church, through my Boy Scout organization, through through other mentoring organizations like boys2men.org, whatever. And if I end up, if my travels, end up that I develop something, if there's a need, great. I'm open to it. That remains to be seen.
It might be sweet. Like, if you develop an organization, it's almost like a Make-A-Wish, but it's like a Make-A-Wish ride in a fast car edition, where you just kind of take a kid around and drive him in one of the cars for a little bit, just so you could feel like Speed Racer for a little bit. That'd be pretty cool.
That would be fun. And there's a lot of people I know that and know of that have been difference makers in people's lives directly through their love of automobiles. But I think that what I have in mind might include that, but it goes above and beyond it.
Well, I mean, like I said, it was a random idea. Who knows?
Yeah, that's cool.
Somebody told the guy who bought the Batmobile, man, you should drive around in a Batman costume and visit kids. And then he started doing that. And now he's like, that guy rides around in California. I think I'm friends with him on Instagram too. He's pretty decent guy. I think he was a millionaire. He had his own business and all that. And he just decided to do that for the rest of his life, like ride around as Batman and go visit sick kids and stuff like that. So you could always ride around as Ed Begley Jr.
Oh, great. Yeah. Powering my house with my own bicycle. No, we actually had, there was a, early, probably too early in my business. I actually did develop a charity awareness car called for Brakes for Brett, which was an organization that addressed the dangers of road racing or street racing. We had a kid named Brett Hollander who was killed by his best friend because his best friend was driving recklessly on a road that's famous for doing so here. Brett's dad took this kid, his name was Andy Short, under his wing. Instead of having him prosecuted and thrown in jail, he did public service of going from high school to high school to high school with Brett's father telling kids what he did and the dangers of doing what he did. He was going 112 miles an hour down a road called Cuba Road that was famous for, if you go fast enough, you can hit the road peak to peak. And he lost control I think he hit a telephone pole and Brett later died. But what was remarkable is Brett's dad taking Andy under his wing and helping him make something positive out of it instead of just having another kid be a victim. And what we did with Mr. Hollander was build a Fox body race car, because it was not just enough to go around telling people not to race. You've got to redirect the impulse and redirect the activity to someplace that's safe and constructive. So we had an autocross ready track car, and the idea was to promote sanctioned autocross events instead of going out and recklessly driving and not knowing what you were doing and hurting yourself or others in the process. There's a saying, it's like, once you race on a track, you never go back. So instead of just telling people no and don't do that, you might say no to that behavior, that expression of it, but bless the desire and model the right way to do something. To me, that would be the healthy thing to do. The biggest example of that in my mind is Big Willie Robinson out in LA, who did that for decades with drag racing and transformed the LA street scene with work like that. So look him up.
Sounds like a plan. So you ready for the finale? You came well equipped today.
Okay. You ready?
The last guy I forgot to tell, so I had to actually tell the joke for him because I left him stranded.
Oh no. All right.
You came armed to the teeth today, so let's hear it. Let's hear your best dad joke or jokes.
So you know why ducks don't fly upside down, right?
No.
They'd quack up. There's big ducks and there's little ducks.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why can't little ducks have babies?
I don't know.
Their quack's too small. So here's the thing. I live right behind a retired duck farm, and before they closed it, they hired a consultant to figure out how to become more profitable. And the consultant says, there's big ducks and there's little ducks, right? And the farmer's like, yeah. And he goes, you need to start raising little ducks instead of big ducks. He's like, why? Smaller bills.
So he comes in with a duck trifecta.
Yes.
Patrick, all I can say is duck you. Duck your sense of humor.
Kids in the room. They're listening. Stop that.
Duck your dadness.
Thank you for having me on, Jason. It was great. I love what you're doing here. I look forward to hearing other dad-to-preneur stories, and I'm glad to be part of the club.
And I look forward to you as well putting my daughter to sleep again, because she fell asleep while we were talking, which is
my dulcet tones, right?
Dulcet tones, yeah.
In the great green room.
Yeah, that's right. The mouse story. That's what that's.
Yeah.
Good night, mouse.
Good night.
Good night, mouse. You good night, duckter. Ugh.
Yeah, there you go.
That's part 2. All right, brother. It was good. It was good talking to you. Thank you for stopping by, and definitely look forward to catching you again on another room. Part of the Dadpreneur Squad now. It's not Arate, but it's Dadate, I guess.
Dadate.
I'm gonna appropriate every other And
All right, that's fine.
group and culture until they're all mine. It's part of the plan.
Well, you know what, yeah, well, right,
I mean,
the good ones steal, right? That's the you gotta.
I met Ed Milet's brother-in-law, and he might be on the show at some point. So at some point, the 60 degrees of separation, I might have to bring Ed Milet into this culture, and then let him spread that Arate love. I don't know. We'll see. It's not a, you know, the world is a wonderful place, and who knows what could happen, right? So
Absolutely right. You
All
got
right.
it, brother.
All right, so I guess we'll talk soon, and thank you for showing up.
Thanks for having me. God
All
bless.
All right, so that helps. So guys, as you can see, got my hands full right here. So I'm going to end the show, but every week I kind of make an offer for a mastermind, something I'm a part of. So we do a scholarship, and I invite people to either text the word mastermind to the number that is, let me see where I got it right here. So that's normally what I do, but we're not doing that this week. What I'm going to do this week is anybody who cares to comment mastermind on this video, either on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you see it for the next week, then I will enter that person into a scholarship to do a hot seat in our next mastermind that we hold on Tuesdays at 9. So, I'm still making the offer. It's just a little bit different today, but I'm hoping that you take advantage of that and maybe you want to be in one of our masterminds, because as you can see, people like Patrick, myself, a lot of my other guests, we find them very valuable, and we would like to invite you to these smaller gatherings, because this is where relationships are built. This is where men are built. This is where, entrepreneurs are built. You gotta be around people that are doing what you're doing. It's very difficult now at this time, especially with COVID concerns, to meet up with people and have these kind of interactions. So the next best thing is, of course, times like this, discussions like this, Zoom meetings, sometimes mastermind meetings, and any way you can get around people that are on a similar path as you and get into deeper conversations. It's going to open you up to bigger and better opportunities. And that's all I'm hoping for you guys. So hopefully some of you guys take advantage of that. And it's open for as long as I'm doing this show. So I think that's it for me. I appreciate you guys stopping by and watching the show while, various things were going on. I mean, that happens. I guess this is showbiz. You got to kind of roll with it. But, like I said, I'm a dad, an entrepreneur, and you have to kind of roll with the punches as they come, or the kids. And I'm going to put this little girl to bed. So that's it for me. Take care. Comb your hair. And I'll see you guys next week. Daddy out.